I want you to take a quick glance down at your wrist for a second. Or if you're holding your phone right now, just think about all those different health, fitness, and diet apps you probably have scattered across your home screen.
Right, there are usually so many of them.
Exactly. Well, today is Tuesday, May 26th, 2026, and if you're someone who tracks your steps, your sleep, or, your heart rate, the entire landscape of personal health tech has just officially shifted beneath our feet this month.
It really has. I mean, we are looking at the culmination of years of scattered digital health experiments finally being pulled together into one massive unified ecosystem.
Yeah,
It's a monumental shift in how consumer health data is actually handled.
for sure. Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to look at a massive stack of source material, tech announcements, medical research to understand one massive event: the official transition and absorption of the Fitbit app into the newly unified Google Health platform.
It's a big one.
We really want to figure out what this grand unification actually means for you. Like, is this the ultimate shortcut to proactive wellness? Are we finally making our data work for us? Or are we just walking into a privacy minefield that happens to be wrapped in a really sleek interface?
Well, I mean, that tension is exactly what makes this transition so critical to understand.
Right.
On one side of the equation, you have incredible predictive AI that can genuinely foresee health crises before they even happen. But on the flip side, we're facing the very real risks of digital overdiagnosis.
Oh, absolutely.
And just the sheer psychological weight of having a machine constantly monitoring your biology.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really grasp why this May 2026 transition is such a massive deal, we first need to take a step back and look at the fragmented mess that preceded it.
Fragmented is definitely the right word.
Right. Google's approach to health tech over the last decade reminds me of that brilliant but totally chaotic friend we all have. You know the one.
Oh, definitely.
They have brilliant ideas scribbled on napkins, they use 3 different calendar apps, they pay for 3 different gym memberships, and they just never seem to sync any of it up.
Yeah, Google bought Fitbit way back in 2021 for, what, $2.1 billion?
$2.1 billion, yeah.
But even after dropping billions, everything stayed in its own silo. You had the Fitbit app over here, you had Google Fit over
The
there.
Pixel Watch ecosystem doing its own thing entirely.
Exactly, and Health Connect trying to act as this messy bridge for Android devices. The broader corporate structure reflected that chaos, too. I mean, the overarching Google for Health division was actually dissolved as a unified department back in 2021.
Which was so confusing.
It sent a very confusing signal to the market. But the individual projects didn't die off. They just kept evolving in their own isolated bubbles.
So our chaotic friend was still working out, just in 5 different places at once. But now it's all being reintegrated under one roof. The Fitbit app, as we knew it, is transforming into the centralized Google Health Hub. They finally bought a master planner and are, getting their life synchronized.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this goes far beyond just a corporate rebrand or a fresh coat of paint on an old application.
Yeah.
This is a massive strategic play for interoperability. Google's goal isn't just to track your afternoon walk anymore. They are aiming to synchronize Apple Health data, Wear OS device data, third-party diet apps, and incredibly official FHIR medical records.
Wait, okay, I saw FHIR mentioned a few times in our research notes. Can we pause there for a second?
Sure.
What does that acronym actually mean for my personal data?
So FHIR stands for Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources.
Okay.
It is essentially the modern standard for how electronic health records are formatted and shared, because for decades, one of the biggest bottlenecks in modern medicine has been that your data at the hospital does not speak the same digital language as the data at your local specialist's office.
Wow.
And neither of them talks to the device on your wrist.
So every time you see a new doctor, you're just filling out the same clipboard of medical history from scratch.
Precisely the problem. By integrating FHIR standards directly into a consumer app, Google Health is trying to become this central nervous system for your entire medical profile.
That's wild.
It acts as a universal translator. So your blood test results from the clinic can now sit in the exact same database as your sleep tracking data from your smartwatch.
Okay, so if this chaotic friend finally got organized and bought the master planner, what happens when I actually open it up on my phone today? Let's talk about the actual user experience.
Sure.
Because if I'm just looking at the same old step counter with a new logo, this isn't much of a revolution.
Right. Well, the redesign is structured very deliberately around 4 primary tabs. They're specifically designed to reduce the friction users previously experienced when jumping between different wellness apps.
Okay, what are they?
First, you have the Today tab, which acts as a smart daily summary. Second is the Fitness tab, which handles activity tracking but layers on adaptive coaching.
Nice.
Third is the Sleep tab, providing deep analysis based on your recovery metrics. And finally, the Health tab.
And from the sources we're looking at, that health tab is the heavy hitter. I mean, this isn't just calories burned.
No, not at all.
This is where those FHIR integrations live. Your clinical medical chart, your prescription medications, your allergies, all sitting right next to your sleep score.
Exactly. It bridges the massive gap between lifestyle tracking and clinical healthcare. But the interface itself, while clean, is just the surface. The true engine driving this new platform is the premium Google Health Coach.
Okay.
And that's powered by their Gemini AI.
I have to push back a little here.
Go for it.
Every tech company on the planet is slapping the word AI on their dashboards right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Are we really getting something revolutionary here, or are we just getting a glorified, chatty pedometer that uses a large language model to tell us, we should drink more water?
Skepticism is entirely warranted given the current tech hype cycle. However, the underlying architecture suggests this is far more than a chatty pedometer.
Okay, how so?
What elevates this coach is its multimodal nature. It isn't just processing text prompts. It's built to synthesize voice, images, and continuous real-time sensor data simultaneously.
Oh.
You can interact with it through natural conversation. You can tell the coach your specific training goals, explain your current routine, and the system cross-references that with the fact that your wearable shows you only got 4 hours of deep sleep last night.
So it actually understands the context of my body, not just the text I type in.
Exactly.
And wait, before we skip past the sensor data, the notes talk heavily about HRV, heart rate variability.
Yes, HRV is crucial.
Let's break that down, because I see that metric on my watch all the time, but what is it actually measuring, and why does this AI care so much about it?
Heart rate variability is one of the most vital metrics for understanding your nervous system. Most people think their heart beats like a metronome, perfectly evenly spaced.
Right.
But a healthy heart actually has tiny variations in the milliseconds between each beat. When you are relaxed and your body is in a state of recovery, that variability is high. Your heart is adaptable.
And when I'm stressed?
When you are physically or mentally stressed, your body enters a fight or flight mode. That's driven by the sympathetic nervous system. In that state, your heartbeat becomes very rigid and metronomic to pump blood efficiently for survival.
Oh, I see.
Your HRV drops significantly. So, if the Gemini coach sees that your HRV has tanked for 3 days straight, indicating high systemic stress, it won't just push you to run your usual 5 miles.
It knows better.
Right, it understands your central nervous system is fatigued and might suggest a restorative yoga session instead.
That makes a lot of sense. And the sources show that Google didn't just build this consumer AI in a vacuum, right?
Definitely not.
This coach is riding on the coattails of their massive background research in medical AI, specifically open research initiatives like Mijima and AI.
Yes. AMI stands for Articulate Medical Intelligence Explorer.
Okay.
These are foundational models specifically trained for complex diagnostic reasoning and clinical conversations. Now, the consumer coach in your phone is not meant to be a doctor.
Right. Legally, they have to say that.
Exactly. But the underlying ability to reason, to spot subtle data patterns, and hold contextually aware conversations, that comes from that very rigorous, medically focused AI development.
It's essentially translating complex medical reasoning into highly personalized fitness advice.
Exactly.
Well, having an adaptive AI health coach in your pocket backed by clinical reasoning sounds incredible, but it brings us to a crucial question.
What's that?
We've seen the flashy tech features, but does staring at these dashboards actually change our biology for the better?
Well, the behavioral science is quite robust on the physical activity front. Meta-analyses in the source material confirm that wearables genuinely boost movement.
By how much?
On average, users add about 1,800 extra steps a day, which translates to roughly 40 more minutes of walking.
Wow, 40 minutes of extra walking a day is a massive win when you look at public health at scale.
It is. The effects on body composition and general cardiovascular fitness are measurably positive. However, we do have to acknowledge the ceiling on clinical endpoints.
Meaning?
The impacts on deeper systemic metrics, things like blood pressure, cholesterol levels, or HbA1c, are much more modest.
Let's explain HbA1c for a second, because that's the term thrown around in diabetes care a lot. It's basically a marker measuring your average blood sugar levels over the past 3 months, right?
Correct. It measures the amount of glucose attached to your red blood cells. The reason a wearable has a harder time moving the needle on something like HbA1c is that behavioral nudges can only do so much against systemic issues.
That makes sense.
A watch telling you to stand up every hour can't outtrack a fundamentally poor diet, genetic predispositions, or severe metabolic syndrome. The watch is a tool, not a cure.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Okay.
Even if the behavioral changes have a ceiling, the predictive power of the data we're generating is mind-blowing.
It really is.
The source material highlights a study using Fitbit data in the National Institutes of Health's All of Us research program. They found that AI can predict hospitalizations with up to 91% accuracy.
Yes, 91%.
And the craziest part, they didn't need a full blood panel or an MRI. They hit 91% accuracy using only heart rate and step data. It's like having a predictive check engine light for your own body.
The application of pattern recognition there is simply staggering.
But how? How does the AI know I'm going to the hospital before I even feel sick just from my pulse and step count?
It comes down to autonomic nervous system responses again. When your body's fighting off an infection or a chronic condition like heart failure is slowly worsening, your baseline metrics shift long before you develop a fever or a cough. Your immune system requires massive amounts of energy to fight a pathogen, which elevates your resting heart rate. At the same time, the feeling of malaise drastically reduces your micro movements throughout the day. You might not notice that you're shifting in your chair less or walking slightly slower, but an algorithm trained on millions of data points flags that subtle delta immediately.
It's the check engine light flashing before smoke actually comes out from under the hood.
Exactly. Though we do have to ground this excitement with a significant caveat regarding the hardware itself.
Right.
While the AI models are incredibly powerful, the precision of consumer wearables varies wildly.
The sources point out the grocery cart problem.
Yes.
Trackers rely on accelerometers, these tiny sensors that measure movement in three-dimensional space. But they can easily over or underestimate your steps depending on how you move your arms.
Right.
If you're pushing a grocery cart, your wrist is locked in place. You could walk a mile through the supermarket and miss 1,000 steps.
The sensors improve under controlled conditions, and for motivating daily habits, absolute clinical precision isn't always strictly necessary. A trend of improvement is still an improvement.
Right. Getting out there is what matters.
But when we start talking about feeding this data into FHIR medical records and using it to predict hospitalizations, those physical limitations regarding precision become a very real factor.
Oh, for sure.
We are basing profound medical predictions on sensors that can be tricked by pushing a stroller.
So we have a highly predictive check engine light, unified with our hospital records, monitored by a multimodal AI. The magic is undeniable.
It is.
But putting all my hospital records, my sleep cycles, my daily steps, and my heart rate into one massive Google server feels like building a giant vault with a neon sign that says, "Rob me."
The trade-offs are substantial. Unifying all of these fragmented pieces into Google Health creates a high-value data honeypot. Now, Google promises incredibly high standards.
They always do.
They maintain a HIPAA compliance where applicable in the U.S., and they have made very public vows not to use this unified health data for targeted advertising.
Which is a relief.
Yeah.
Because getting targeted ads for heart medication just because my watch noticed my pulse spiked while watching a scary movie would be a terrifying dystopian experience.
Whoa, it would fundamentally destroy user trust.
Completely.
But even with those promises, global cyber breaches in the healthcare sector are a constant escalating threat. Centralizing the data makes the system incredibly convenient for the user and their doctor, but it also creates a single point of failure that is highly lucrative for malicious actors.
Yeah, that data is forever.
Health data is far more valuable on the black market than credit card numbers because it cannot be changed.
And it's not just the external threats of hackers, right? We also have to look at the AI itself. We talked about how impressive the AI research is. But what happens when the AI is just wrong? Large language models have a known tendency to hallucinate.
Right. A hallucination is when an AI presents false or logically flawed information with extreme confidence.
Yeah. In a creative writing task, a hallucination is funny. In a wellness context, a hallucination could lead to unnecessary panic or improper health advice. If the AI misinterprets a sensor glitch as a severe cardiac event, the user consequence is immediate distress.
Which ties directly into the issue of bias and the digital divide.
This is perhaps the most systemic risk.
Mm-hmm.
Predictive AI models are only as good as the data they are trained on. We were talking about premium wearables and the latest smartphones required to run the Gemini AI coach, Not everyone can afford those.
Right. So if the NIH is using this wearable data to model public health outcomes, and the data only comes from affluent populations who can afford a $300 watch, the medical research itself becomes skewed.
Exactly.
The AI learns the baseline of a wealthy, tech-savvy user and applies it to everyone.
It creates a walled garden of proactive preventative care. The technology risks widening health disparities rather than democratizing health insights. We have to be deeply critical of who is represented in the data making these clinical predictions. Let's bring this down to the everyday user who is fully in the ecosystem. You have the watch, you have the app, and it's tracking everything. The sources highlight a massive psychological toll, user fatigue, and overdiagnosis.
Yes.
I joke about this sometimes, but I genuinely feel judged by my watch.
A lot of people do.
If I eat late-night ice cream, I wake up, look at the screen, and my recovery score is bright red. It induces actual anxiety.
The medical community refers to this hyperfixation on tracking as a form of digital anxiety. Sometimes it manifests as orthosomnia, the unhealthy obsession with achieving perfect sleep metrics.
Oh, wow. Orthosomnia.
Even if the Gemini coach is designed to be conversational and non-judgmental, receiving a push notification that your heart rate variability dropped unexpectedly instantly triggers a stress response.
Which ironically raises your heart rate and lowers your HRV even more. It's a vicious feedback loop.
Precisely. And on a macro level, this hypermonitoring leads to overdiagnosis. The human body is noisy. It has harmless anomalies and minor fluctuations that resolve themselves naturally. But when a watch flags every single anomaly, it sends people rushing to clinics for unnecessary testing. This strains the healthcare system and subjects the patient to the nocebo effect.
The nocebo effect.
Feeling physically worse simply because a screen told them something might be wrong.
Wow. And add all of this to the massive regulatory hurdles. Google is pushing for global interoperability, but the legal frameworks for health data vary wildly. What is completely legal in the U.S. under HIPAA might entirely violate the strict privacy protections of GDPR in Europe.
Yes.
Navigating that regulatory maze while maintaining a unified global app is an incredibly delicate balancing act between rapid technological innovation and patient protection laws.
Honestly, unifying the tech is actually the easy part. Unifying the global legal framework is the real challenge.
So what does this all mean for you? Google Health's big unification, bringing Fitbit, Google Fit, your clinical medical records, and the Gemini AI coach under one roof, is undeniably a giant leap toward proactive patient-centered medicine.
It really is.
It takes that scattered, chaotic friend and gives them a master plan. It significantly reduces the friction of trying to understand your own biology.
Getting the most out of this transition requires a balanced approach. It requires the technology, yes, but it also requires actual human medical checkups and good old-fashioned offline movement that isn't dictated by a screen.
Yeah. There are some early glitches being reported as the platforms merge, but the potential is massive. As we wrap up, what's the biggest takeaway from all this source material?
I would point back to the psychological toll we just discussed. I'll leave you with this thought to mull over. As an AI coach becomes perfectly adept at reading your vitals, learning the exact rhythm of your heart, the micro fluctuations in your temperature, the depth of your sleep, and telling you exactly how you feel, do you risk outsourcing your own physical intuition?
That is a deep question.
At what point does letting an app translate your body's signals cause you to simply stop listening to those signals yourself? The technology is brilliant, but we shouldn't let it deafen us to our own internal voice.
That is a phenomenal point to end on. You don't want the check engine light to become the only way you know how to drive the car. Keep glancing down at your wrist, but don't forget to look up. Stay curious, stay active, and always keep questioning the data. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.